Hello, welcome to Code Snippet. So in this video, we are going to see one of the important topic when it comes to Java Spring called as beans, right? So what exactly is a bean inside your Spring, and what is the life cycle of that bean, when it will get created, when it will get destroyed, and what all steps it will go through? All of these questions we are going to answer in this video. So there are many interview questions that will be asked on a topic bean and the life cycle of bean. They may ask you to explain the entire life cycle. So let's go through it in this video. So this is going to be fun. So sit back, relax and enjoy the show. So let's first go through the agenda of the video, what all things we are going to cover. So first we will see what exactly is bean inside a Spring, right? So this question we are going to answer. After that we will see how exactly we are going to create beans inside Spring, right? After that we will see how Spring finds the bean and how it will create and maintain the beans, right? We will see when exactly the beans are going to be created, right? All of these points we are going to check first. After that we are going to go through the actual life cycle of bean, right? There are multiple phases or multiple steps through which a bean goes through in its life cycle. So each and every step we are going to go through, right? So let's get started with the first question. What is bean in Spring? So bean is nothing but a Java object, basically, nothing else. It will just be a Java object, right? And the Java object which is maintained and managed by your Spring IOC container, right? So what is Spring IOC container? So Spring IOC container is a container, let's say, in which your all beans are stored, right? And IOC container manages all of those beans inside your entire application. There might be 100 beans, 200 beans, 1000, even 10,000, right? It can be any amount, right? So all those beans will be inside your IOC container, right? Now that is a Spring bean for us. It will just be a Java object, right? After that, let's see how we are going to create beans, right? So when it comes to bean creation, there are two ways by which you can create beans, right? First one is by using a component annotation and second one is by using bean annotation, right? So mostly all the beans you can create by using component annotation, but there are few beans which you cannot create with component annotation, and in that case you will need this bean annotation, right? Now let's see how we can create a bean by using component annotation, right? So here I have a Spring Boot application, right? And here I have a class. So this is basically a simple user class. Now I didn't really add any annotation over here. Now let's say we want to create an object of this class. How we are going to create? We will say something like user object equals to new user, right? By using new keyword you can create an object, right? And how Java creates the object? By using a constructor, right? So this class will have something called as default constructor, right? Even if we don't give it here, it will have a default constructor, right? Spring uses default constructor in order to create your bean, right? So it will just create the object of this class and it will create by using a default constructor, right? So here I don't have any annotation, so it won't create the object of this class, right? So here my application is running, right? Now let me show you how we can actually check the beans, right? So here I'm using actuator. So this is basically a feature which provides a production ready features in your Java Spring Boot project. So actuator will actually help you to see what all beans that you have in your application. So here all the beans of this application are listed, right? So let me just find the bean that we want, right? So here I will just search with user, right? So here nothing found, right? So that means we don't have any bean with user, right? Because we are not adding any component annotation to create that, right? Now let's go ahead and add a component annotation over here. So what I will do, I will say @component, right? And now let's rerun this application. So I'll just bring up the application again, right? It's coming up. There we go. Now I will just reload this and let me just open this, and all the beans I will open. Now I will do Command F again and I will search for user. Let me just zoom it so that you can see it. So here you have user bean, right? So as you can see, a new bean is created for us, right? A user bean, as we have added our component annotation on this user, right? So that's how the bean will be created and that's how you can see it. The moment we add component annotation, what Spring will do? Spring will create the user object for us, right? And it will be maintained inside your IOC container. And the other thing to highlight here is that Spring uses your default constructor to create that object, right? Now that is how you can create a bean by using component annotation, right? Now not only component, but there are various annotations which also creates beans, right? So here I have a service class as well, and service also creates a bean for you. But if I go inside service, it's again a component, right? So it is component only, so that will create a bean, right? So service is basically specialization of your component, right? Also one more example is that REST controller will also create a bean for you. right? But if you go inside REST controller, there is a controller annotation, and inside controller annotation you have component, right? So in turn that is a component as well, right? So basically component is someone which creates a bean for us, right? That's how we can use component to create a bean, right? Now let's go back to our user class. Now let me quickly add some constructor over here. So for both of them I'll add a constructor. For both the fields I have added a constructor over here. There won't be any default constructor in this class because we have added a constructor explicitly, which is kind of a parameterized constructor, right? Now what will happen in this case is that, see, we are getting a compiler time error upfront, right? Let me zoom it. So here if you can see, it is saying could not auto wire, no beans of string type found, right? So when your Spring is going to try to create object of this user class, Spring do not know username and password, right? So the initialization of your application itself will fail here because the Spring is not aware of username and password, and there is no default constructor inside this user, right? In that case you won't be able to create your bean by using component, so you'll need to remove it from here, right? So this is the case when bean annotation comes into picture, right? So what we need to do is, let me add another configuration class basically. So what I will do, I'll create a new package, say config, and I will add a new Java class, say bean configuration, and I will say configuration over here. And here now what I will do, I will say public user, and I will just import this user over here, import class, this user class, and I will say, and I will just simply return new user of, let's say John, and let's say password is password, right? And what I will do here is I will mark this as a bean. Now Spring will use this class, it will come and check here that okay, we are trying to create a bean. Here what we are doing here is we are returning a new user which will take this username as John and password as password. So in this case we are explicitly providing username and password over here. Now let's just rerun this code and let's see if this bean is created for us, right? And that is up. Let me just reload this and let me open this one and let me search for user again. So as you can see, the bean with name create user will be created because the name of the bean will be the name of your function in this case, right? Now this is how you can create a bean by using this bean annotation, right? So that is a special case where we cannot create a bean by using component annotation over here. So what we do, we use bean over here, right, to create bean like this, right? So this is how we can create it. So that marks the end of how to create beans. So these are the ways as we have seen. So let me go back here and let's check these two. Now let's proceed and see how Spring finds the bean, right? So let's answer this question over here. So how exactly Spring finds which bean needs to be created, right? So let's go into our Spring Boot project and let me open this book application. So here this is the main class of your application, and here we annotate it by using Spring Boot application, right? So if you go inside Spring Boot, we have something called as component scan, right? So the first way how Spring finds which classes needs to be injected as a bean is by using component scan, right? So all the packages that we give inside your component scan will be scanned for your components, right? So by default, we will have a default class path over here, but we can give any other package. All the beans inside your this package will be scanned, right? So let's say here this book controller will be scanned. Let's say your book service will be scanned over here because it comes into same package. And all the classes which have these special annotations, right? For example, let's say component, service, controller, all those will be converted to your bean, right? You can also add an explicit component scan annotation here, right? And you can include your packages, right? Base packages you can say, and you can just include your base packages. For example, let's say your com.example, right? So all the classes inside this package will be scanned for your component, right? So that is how your Spring will find all the classes inside this base package, and it will create a beans for you for those classes, right? So this is the first way, right? Now let me remove this because we already have component scan inside this Spring Boot application, right? Now there is second way, right? Second way is by using configuration class, right? So whatever functions we have marked as bean annotation, that will be injected as a bean, right? So this is the second way how your Spring is creating your beans, right? So by using bean also. Two ways. First one is by using component scan. Second way is by using your bean annotation, right? So that's how Spring finds your bean, right? So simple one. Now next one is when the beans are going to be created, right? Next question is when beans are going to get created, right? While initializing in between, when exactly is the bean going to be created, right? So let's answer that question, right? So here there are two type of bean creation, right? So there are basically two cases when your bean is going to be initialized, right? First one is eager initialization. So eager initialization means your beans are going to get created when you are actually initializing or starting your application, right? So all the beans which have singleton scope will be initialized when the application start, right? That we call as eager initialization, and mostly all the beans will be initialized upfront and the dependencies will be injected accordingly, right? The second type is lazy initialization over here. So lazy initialization means your bean will be created whenever it is actually needed, right? So some class is invoking that bean, at that time only your bean will be initialized, right? For example, we have beans of scope prototype. So there are a few other beans as well with different scope. For example, request or session which will be initialized lazily, right? So don't worry about this singleton or scope for now. Just remember that we have two type of initialization. First one will be initialized eagerly, means while the start of your application, and second one will be lazy, whenever it is needed, at that time only it will be initialized, right? Now let's proceed and let's start seeing our bean life cycle, right? Now this is the potential life cycle of our bean, right? So this is how it looks. So these are all the steps through which your bean will go through, right? From your application start to until the bean is destroyed, right? So first your application will start, right? Your Spring Boot application will load when we click on run over here, right? When we run your application, this application will start. Then your IOC container will start, right? So remember, IOC container is something which holds your beans, right? Spring will take care of all this configuration. Auto configuration will happen. You don't really have to worry about it, and IOC container will get started, right? After that, Spring will start constructing bean. How it will do? As we have seen, it will check out all the packages by using component scan, and it will check all the components inside your application, and it will start creating beans, right? Now the beans will get created in this step, right? Then inject dependency into constructed beans. So there may be the case when there is some class in which other class is injected. For example, let me go to our book controller. So this is a bean, right? And here if you see, a book service is injected, right? So if I go inside book service, this is again a separate bean, right? So this book service is a dependency for your book controllers. So these dependencies will be added inside your this step. So inject dependencies into your constructed beans. So in post construct, before your bean is going to be used inside your application, let's say you want to perform some steps inside your bean, then you can do that inside your post construct. After that, you will use the bean, you will perform all the tasks, right? You will hit your APIs and everything. After that, you have pre-destroy, right? So before destroying bean, if you want to perform any operation on that bean, you can do in this step, and at the end the bean will be destroyed, right? Now this is how your bean life cycle will look, right? Now let's go through all these steps, right? Now application start. So let me start our application. It's already running. I will just rerun it. Our application, let's say, is starting, right? Next we have IOC container started, right? So here if you can see over here, initializing Spring embedded web application context. So web application context is nothing but your IOC container, right? So it is initializing over here, and the initialization of that is completed over here, right? So this step is completed here, right? Initialization completed in this much amount of time, right? After that, the beans will get constructed, right? Now what we will do, let's go to our user bean, let's say. So I will just add a print statement over here saying user bean is created, right? So that we can see when exactly this bean is going to be created. So let me just bring up this application again. So let's see the logs again, right? So as we have seen here, web application context will be initialized, and after that, if you can see here, this statement is printed that our user bean is created, right? So this is the early initialization. At the time of your application startup only, this bean is being created, right? So this is this stage that your bean is being constructed, right? Now inject dependencies into your constructed bean, right? So the inject dependencies will happen over here only, right? So as we have seen over here, our book controller has book service as a dependency, right? So let's go back to our bean. Let me reload this and let me open this and let's try to find our book controller. I will search book controller over here, let's say, right? So this is our book controller, and here also you can see dependencies. So let me open this and scroll to right. Book controller have book service as its dependency, right? So that is how you can check dependencies basically. So, and these dependencies will be injected after the beans are created. So this dependency injection will happen in this particular step, right? Now the next step inside our bean lifecycle is post construct, right? So in order to demonstrate that, what I will do here is, let's add one function. Let's say here what I will do, public void, let's say this function won't return anything, and let's say initialize. And here I will just add one print statement saying initializing user, right? And here what I will do, I will mark this as post construct. Once this user bean is created, we want to, let's say, perform certain tasks. Let's say we want to perform login, or let's say I want to initialize few variables, right? All those tasks we can perform in this function, right? Now let's run this code and let's see if this particular function is being invoked, right? So as you can see over here, initializing user is being invoked because this post construct will be initialized when your object is created. So first the bean will be created, and after that the post construct will be called, right? So as I mentioned already, you can use this for various purposes. For example, initializing your variables, or let's say login purpose, or anything that you want, right? You can do it here according to your use case, right? Now that is the post construct for us, and that is how you can use it. Next is use the bean, right? Now book service bean is ready, and you can make use of that inside your book controller. So whenever user is going to call, let's say, add book API, then you can actually going to call book service dot add book, right? So book service is basically your bean, right? And you are saying add book, so that particular function will get called, right? And again there is one more bean which you are calling from service as well, which is repository, right? So it's kind of a chain of beans through which your API call will go through, right? That is how you can use the beans, right? So after you use the beans, there is a pre-destroy, right? So before destroying your beans, let's say you want to perform certain tasks. Let's say you want to do garbage collection, or let's say you want to destroy few database connections. All those things you can do in pre-destroy, right? Let's see the example of that now. So here what I will do, here I will add one more method. Let's say, let me copy this and let's just paste it, and we will say pre-destroy. I will say destroying user over here. What I will do, I will mark this as pre-destroy, right? Not post construct, pre-destroy, right? And now let's run this code. Now as you can see here, post destroy is never called, right? Because this print statement we are not able to see over here, right? Why this was not called? Because your application context or Spring IOC container is not destroyed yet. So once the container is destroyed, it will start destroying all your beans, right? So in order to demonstrate that, what I'll do, I'll go to this main application, and what we can do here, so this Spring application.run will return us this configurable application context, right? We can catch it into a variable and just close this explicitly over here, right? So I'm just doing that to demonstrate how pre-destroy is going to work, right? So let's just rerun this application now and let's see what is happening. So as you can see here, once we close our application context, this destroying user is printed. So basically our pre-destroy is invoked. This particular statement is printed on the console, right? So that is how your pre-destroy work, and after that your bean will be destroyed, right? So all the beans inside your application context will be destroyed like that. Now that is the last step in your bean life cycle. So if this question is asked in an interview, you can highlight all these steps, right? All the examples that I have given in this video. So bean life cycle also we have covered, so that marks the end of it. So I hope by now you have fair understanding of what are beans, how we can create the beans, and how the life cycle of beans exactly look. If you have any questions on this topic, feel free to comment. I'll make sure to answer those questions. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and if you like the video, hit the like button. Also share this video with your friends, and see you in the next video.